Hey now, welcome to the Dirty Side of the Track, America's leading Formula One podcast. I'm Brian, that's Rob. It is an extra special episode. We'll tell you about what that's going to be in a second. How you doing, Rob?
I'm really good, thanks. And yeah, this is one of the episodes I always look forward to. I wish we could make it happen more often, but really looking forward to what we have today. Who's going to say it? Shall I say it? Do you want to say it?
Yeah, all you,
It's
buddy.
your. Oh, no, come on. This is your baby. You put so much blood, sweat, and virtual tears into making this thing happen that I think you should announce what we have today.
Well, we have the Discord crew. We have four of the Discord members who could make the time and had the desire to join us as we kind of look ahead to the 25 season. And it is one of my favorite episodes because without us doing this silly little podcast, we wouldn't have met. Well, you knew one of them already, but I wouldn't have met any of them. And any of the members of the Discord beyond the four who join us. And that it's just a great place to participate, to discuss the races as they come up, to ask questions like why did that happen, and it's just a great place. So I'm excited to we'll talk about that as we get there a little later in the episode.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's pretty much we'll have news and social, which was a little bit slim pickings because we won't really dive into testing too much because we'll pick that up in the Discord part of the episode. The videos vault was barren, but you found us a little stat. We'll pick up the February F1 Fantasticness result and talk about that. And then we will head over to the Discord conversation, and that will be this week's episode. So let's jump on into one which kind of split the internet really as
Yep.
to whether this was a good or a bad thing.
Split me
And I'd be
too.
interested. Okay, okay. So Monaco is going to have mandatory 2 pit stops this year, in wet or dry weather. I imagine if it's wet, you could end up with more than two, but it's definitely going to be a two-stopper this year. So none of this kind of like Max falling asleep on his pillow. And you're going to, I think, the dry races will need to use 3 sets of tires with 2 compounds used. Um, Before I give my view, then you're split. What's your view on this?
Well, it's kind of like a diagonal split because it's not a straight up and down, and it's not a across the waist belt line. It's just a diagonal, and one part of it is my heart, and one part of it's my head. And what I mean by that is, I want Monaco to be fun and exciting as a race, not just a good Saturday of quali, a high stakes single lap, one of my favorite qualies of the season, and then don't even show up Sunday because nothing's going to happen. I don't want that to happen. And if this helps the racing be better by having the jeopardy of an extra pit stop and the timing and the strategy, cool. I'm all for it. That is my heart. My head, on the other hand, says we're contriving reasons. We're making things up to make it exciting. We're changing the rules for one race because we know it sucks so bad. And it's just an artificial, fake, contrived way of trying to make it interesting. And I don't like that. Like that, to me, there's something in my head that says that's not the way this should need to be done. So I'm split. I hope it works. I think it's dumb.
Okay, I'm split. I also hope it works. I don't think it's dumb. I think they have to try something before there becomes too much pressure to just kill Monaco off the calendar.
Yeah.
It can't survive on being a fantastic quali day. So I'm with you. If we all know that you can't really overtake in Monaco, like even when the cars were smaller, it's not like there were 10 passes a lap, right?
Right.
Yes, there were more. Yes, there were more, but it's not like it was a big sort of overtake fest. So if this now gets all the strategy guys getting their abacuses out and their murder boards and strings and all this kind of stuff to work out where the optimum place is to do 2 stops now, I think that can only help. I think it does help. If it doesn't, my worry is what's the future for Monaco if they can't make it better, even with this artificial thing? Um, with all this pressure for all these other races all want a spot on the calendar now, do you think Monaco goes into rotation?
Nope. I have this. I have the solution. I'm surprised you didn't ask because you always know I'm good for this stuff. First of all, it's a Le Mans start. The drivers stand on the side of the grid. They run to their cars, strap themselves in, and get going. And so, that matters. So that's what we do. We do a Le Mans start, and then they have to stop once at Rascas for a drink. And so they have to kind of pull in and park on the corner there because it's a bar. They have to get out and have one beverage, non-alcoholic, because, I mean, I'm being real with these ideas. And so they have to drink it from start to finish, get back in their car, strap themselves back in, and finish the race. There it is.
You've missed an obvious one.
What is it?
Then they'll pull in at the casino at the top of the hill.
Done.
They can't move on until they get 3 sevens on the
And then they
on the
have
slot
to
machines.
they
And
pull
then
over by the pool and they have to do one lap in the pool, get their race suit back on, get back in the car. Now that is a race I would watch, and that's just as fake as the idea of an extra pit stop, in my opinion. But anyway.
Moving on. Cadillac are hinting at something which we mentioned ages ago when Cadillac first got confirmed on the grid. Now, obviously not just we said this. I think everybody that really looked at Cadillac said this. But I'm putting this out there as being finger on the pulse. F1 chief Dan Tauris said, "I would love to see an American driver in Formula One, but we want to make sure we do it the right way. It won't just be a process of just grabbing an American and sticking him behind the wheel. We want to do it in the right and proper way. Also think that an experienced driver is crucial for setting a team up from the team standpoint, so we're definitely looking into bringing some experience into the driver tandem. Ages ago, me and you said, Colton Herta, Valtteri Bottas, do the deal now. Just get it done."
I mean, I already have the sound queued up.
This is Valtteri Bottas, and you're listening to the dirty side of the track.
How would you not want Valtteri as that experienced driver for Andretti? How does that not just make a ton of sense?
Yeah, I mean, we've all said there's probably a number of drivers that are out of a seat right now that will be circling around that Cadillac one, and
Checo,
but there's only going to be a few of them, maybe one with a mullet and a mustache, that can maybe bring that whole part of part of the Mercedes empire. I know Checo was part of Red Bull's domination, but was he just kind of there making up the? I mean,
right.
I don't know. Maybe I'm being bad on Checo here and saying that he doesn't bring much to a team. But if you're looking at drivers that are available, that tick the box of being an experienced driver, that know how to kind of be part of a team, I don't know why you look past Valtteri. I really don't. And I know we're biased because we had him on the pod, but even putting that to one side, I think it makes total sense.
It makes sense.
To put
Agreed.
Valtteri in the Cadillac and then bring an American rookie in alongside him.
I agree. Speaking of other American F1 news, something that I had missed at the very end of last year, and I saw it in testing, and we will talk about testing, as Rob said, in the Discord portion. MoneyGram Haas F1 team and the University of Chicago Medicine form a partnership to foster healthcare connections in communities worldwide. That is the biggest bunch of made-up marketing BS as a reason to sponsor an F1 car I've ever heard in my life. I read the whole article. I bring this up, A, because I'm in Chicago. B, I got my master's degree at the University of Chicago. And C, why is a hospital system sponsoring an F1 car? I cannot for the life of me figure the tie-in. So I'm watching testing, and I'm watching the Haas go round track, and I go, does that say University of Chicago Medicine on it? And it does. And I'm like, why? And so I was just so confused. And yes, I love the University of Chicago. I had a great couple years there getting my MBA, but I cannot figure out how the head of the medicine team, department, function, whatever, said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to spend $3 million a year sponsoring an F1 car that really only runs in America for about 3 hours a year.
So, what you're telling me is you are an alumni
Yes.
of a educational institution.
Yes.
Which sponsors a Formula One.
Well, but it's the medicine department. It's not the school itself. But yeah.
University of Chicago, you have a way in where you could knock on the door and, hey, remember me? I got my master's here. And by the way, you sponsor a Formula One team. I do a Formula One podcast. You know it makes sense. Send us to Vegas.
I mean, stranger things have happened. How we got into ESPN and other places, to have conversations with people. But yeah, that ain't going to happen. And then this week, if we move on, all right, to the video vault, there's nothing in it because I was a little busy with a variety of things. And I didn't see anything come across my For You page, if you will, whatever they call that on YouTube. And so instead, I'd like to do a stat. And since we are 2 weeks away from Melbourne, 2 weeks, it is so close. Next week, we will have a preview of a race. Exactly. Rob is freaking out excited just like me. And so we're going to have just one stat, but we're going to use some music because it's time for the return of Sap Stats. Sap Stats 2 weeks away from the Australian Grand Prix edition to open the 2025 season. And actually, it's Sap Stat, singular. Okay, so with all these rookies, and we will shortly debate on the Discord episode what makes a rookie, with all of these rookies from 3 to 6, depending on how you want to count, the question came up, what is the best debut for someone on the grid today? And I was looking at this. I said I was kind of curious because I remember Ollie Behrman last year when he substituted in for Carlos and his appendix in the Ferrari at Jeddah, and he was 7th. And I'm like, I was thinking to myself, did anyone beat that on their debut? And so I looked, and of course, surprise, surprise, Lewis Hamilton was 3rd in Australia 2007. Now, I remember him having a good year, of course, but I don't remember him being 3rd in his first race. So that was tremendous. Of the current drivers, those are the top 2. Lewis, 3rd in his debut in 07. Behrman last year, P7. And then we have only 2 other drivers who finished in the points on debut of this iteration of the grid, again, of current drivers. Rob, I know you can see it, but did you take a guess, or did you know, or were you surprised when you saw the other 2 point scoring drivers?
It was one of those stats where I don't know that I actually had a view on it. As in, like, you'd have asked me, I would have gone, I don't know. But as I can see, it's very hard to unsee it. But yeah, it's interesting. I will give you that. It's actually a very interesting graphic of kind of who's came where on their debut. You look down the bottom there with Max and Oscar with DNF on their.
I can't remember Max's DNF. Also, Australia to open the season, as you would expect, 2015. I don't remember that. And I also don't remember Oscar DNFing at Bahrain in 23. But is it a surprise Lance Stroll DNF'd in his launch? do you think he was going through the... I'm sorry for the Lance hate. I'm sure there's some of you guys listening who love Lance. Lance is fine. He's fine and good. But that wasn't a surprise. But yeah, the other 2 drivers who had points on debut of this current iteration of the grid, Carlos Sainz and Yuki Tsunoda. P9, both of them.
Yeah.
Wow. So then the question for you, Rob, before we close the stat vault this week, is... we have 3 drivers who are on debut in Australia in 2 weeks. Kimi Antonelli, Gabriel Bortoleto, and Isaac Hadjar. Any of them scoring a point?
I would have to say at the moment, and obviously we dig deeper into this with the Discord guys later in the episode, but Antonelli's the only one that stands a chance for points.
Only
I think,
one
out
with
of
a
those
chance.
3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it'll be fascinating to see if he will become the 5th current driver on the grid to score points on debut. And with that, we will close the stat vault stats. There's no music, but we'll move on. Rob, you want to talk about the bracket?
Oh, yeah. So we updated the bracket last week. I think we were on the cusp of the semi-finals. Yep. We thought that Mansell's Williams was going to win that semi. Or win its quarter and get through to the semi-finals. It did. So we had, I don't have it in front of me now, but we had McLaren against something. Oh, John
the
Player
Lotus
Special.
John Player Special.
Yes. And then Williams went up against the Bitten and Hisses?
Yes.
Okay. Which both were quite close.
Yes.
But ultimately, as fate would have it, I put a picture online of kind of the iconic Mansell versus Senna coming down the straight next to each other, wheel to wheel. And that's what we ended up with in the final. Brian was pretty convinced. He sent me a WhatsApp that said, you know, you can't look past Senna's car. It's going to be, I don't think you used the word landslide, but you kind of implied that you felt that was just going to crush it.
It wasn't a landslide at all.
Oh my gosh. I was losing it with Brian on WhatsApp. I was going, we've got 1 hour left on the Twitter vote because the Twitter one was the one with the 2-day countdown. So we were using that as our overall kind of countdown clock on it. Threads had locked out. Twitter was, I think, when we added that, Blue Sky and Threads together, it was like neck and neck. It was absolutely the same number. And then we got one more vote come through for McLaren to edge it ahead. And then I text Brian when I think there was about 20 minutes left of the vote. I said, we've had one more vote. This is either now a tie, and we've got to work out what the hell we're doing, or McLaren's taking it by 2 votes. And it was the McLaren. But wow, was that closer than I thought it was going to be.
51% for that iconic McLaren with the Marlboro livery. We may have called it the MP44 from 93, but it may have been the MP48 from 93 as opposed to the MP44 from 88. But I'm not going to get inside baseball. Just know it looks exactly the same. It's the red and white McLaren Marlboro. And I have no problem with that car winning.
No. I mean, to be honest, the Final Four, even like the Jordan wasn't probably as iconic, I really had no problem with the Final Four. I thought they were all good-looking liveries. That snake on the front of the Jordan was fantastic.
I would actually go even further and say of the final 8, and again, check it out on social to go look at the final bracket. But the Jordan 7 Up, that thing was phenomenal, and it lost to the John Player Special, which is phenomenal. We already talked about the McLaren Marlboro, the Lotus 38 from 1965, Jim Clark's car, the green and yellow. That thing got beaten pretty bad by the McLaren, but as you said, the Jordan bitten and hisses. The Golf cars didn't do as well, the Tyrrell Golf and the McLaren Golf, but I loved the Lotus 99T.
You
that
did, didn't
yellow.
you? You fell in love with that over the bracket.
I did. It I remembered being great. It's now probably my second favorite livery at this point. And so anyway, it was so much fun to do this. And thanks everybody for voting in our February Fantasticness.
Yeah, thanks for voting. Thanks for pulling it together, Brian. I know it's a lot of work getting all the scheduling done for all the votes throughout the month of February. And I really enjoyed then at the end photoshopping Jim Clark sat on the wheel of the Senna McLaren in Spa to put all three of our bracket winners together.
You can check out, if you haven't seen the brackets and that photo that Rob created, on our website, www.dirtysideofthetrack.com, and it's under special episodes.
Speaking of special episodes, now it's time to check out how we got on with the Discord crew.
Box.
It is time for one of our favorite episodes of the year, a chance to chat with a lot of the folks from the Discord server. And we do this throughout the year on the Discord server, where we send messages back and forth. But this is a chance to kind of do the podcast episode. So, Rob, are you as excited as I am, my friend?
Yes, I am. And thank you to organising this, Brian, because, this has been your event. You've been so excited the last couple of weeks. There's been polls going left, right and centre. We didn't know what was going on, but, do appreciate you pulling it all together.
You're not just saying that because we were all screaming at each other for the last 4 minutes?
I don't know what you're talking about.
I don't either. And we are very happy to have Lee, Az, Andy, and Nimrod. Welcome, guys. Thank you for making the time on a Sunday afternoon, evening to join us to do this. It is much appreciated. So, we're like 2 weeks away from the start of the season. I couldn't be more excited. I think we all know that it's going to be a banger of a season. But we just finished testing. And so I'm kind of curious what you guys thought of testing. So, let's start with Lee. Lee, what did you think of the testing? What did you take away from this event?
I took away from that a lot of things can go wrong or unexpected, like a bus or some glass smashing from a stone or the power being cut. Oh, the bus was a joke.
Did you,
in general,
sorry, Lee, did you see the memes going around about the bus where they kept putting like a different kind of on one? It was like Logan Sargent returns to F1.
Yeah, yeah, I saw that one. In general, I thought testing was very good. There were some very interesting takeaways. Red Bull struggling, Williams 8/10 faster, Alpine 7/10 faster in qualifying last year. They all look good. The reliability of these cars now absolutely unbelievable.
Yeah, when was the last time we had a testing where basically we saw one or two cars go behind the screen for brief periods of time, and it may not even been problems. They may have just been working on new settings. It was wild.
Yeah, I mean, the only time they can put the screens up in testing is when they're doing the floor changes.
Right.
And that could have been just it. But yeah, it's unbelievable reliability. I don't think we even had we didn't have a red flag from car stoppages. We had 2 spins on the final day, as far as I can remember.
Yeah, I think we just had the red flag for power cut, didn't we? On one of
broken
the
glass and the
bus.
bus.
The broken glass and the bus. Yeah, that's it. That's the only stoppages.
So, but before we let someone else chip in here, Lee, I have to ask, because we say it every year. It's just testing, and Paul will tell us you can't take anything from testing. But you've gone big there. You've gone on 3 days of testing. You said Red Bull don't look great, Williams look fast. Are you taking that from testing, or is it more?
I'm taking it. They've made improvements for Williams. That Red Bull haven't really gone any further forward than what last year were, and the rest of the teams are really on their game. That's my big takeaway from it. Whether we see that in Melbourne, I would love to see. But until then, I just enjoyed seeing the cars on track.
So Nimrod, what did you think of this as well? Do you agree with Lee? Do you have different perspectives? I'd love your thoughts.
I didn't watch any of testing before I say anything that gets me held accountable for. but I do a bit of reading, and the F1 site likes to put on their like quali and race simulation. And I thought, oh, these are numbers that could be plucked from thin air. Sometimes. So I went back and found last year's ones. I kind of compared it to, I guess, what I perceived was the year, and also kind of had a look at barring quali because I thought
like
maybe
this.
there's some correlation. And I mean, Haas were rated like the slowest in both quali and race prediction last year, and that really wasn't the case. So yeah, I mean, I'd like to get excited about testing. I have done so many years in the past, but I've kind of taken a bit of a more laid back approach this year and gone, you know what? I'll see what happens in Melbourne, but it is quite nice to see there does seem to be some competitiveness. Although if these charts are correct, I think it's going to be more one-sided than we think in Melbourne, or at least a lot of us hope, because apparently McLaren have as much of an advantage that Red Bull had last year. So if whoever wrote these up is correct, then I hope they're not.
I love the fact that you went back and checked last year's graphic coming out of testing for times for quali and race pace against what actually happened, and then this year's to see the deltas. That's analysis. That's something Rob would never think about being able to do.
Never. But what I did see was I think Nate Saunders had put out, or somebody had put out the kind of the paddocks, taking the paddocks pulse on testing. So not the silly thing. There was a kind of couple of like spoof things flying around, but there was kind of like taking the paddocks pulse. And a lot of them were saying McLaren maybe further ahead than people think. I don't know. This has maybe got to be people guessing like the runs they were on or the fuel loads or whatever. Because basically everybody banked a lot of laps. No one looked massively faster than anybody else, but they've come away saying McLaren looked maybe further ahead than people think. Then it looks like Ferrari have taken a step up, and it's Ferrari and Red Bull maybe locked together with Mercedes close behind. Was kind of the I think was the four that I read, and then everything else, throw a dice and see what you find. But I don't know. What does anyone else think? I'll bring you in here. What do you think anyone has seen there to feel that McLaren is so far ahead when really we didn't see anything of anybody being miles ahead?
I have two things, because like Nimrod, my very clever son, I haven't watched any testing, but I've watched small things. So for me, the numbers that I did read about McLaren putting out and being consistently at high pace with relatively hard tires, yeah, cool. But we're not comparing apples to apples. We're comparing apples to bananas at best. For me, the highlight, if I may focus on that that green flow viz they put, I mean, all those cars were like a P. Diddy party. So like that's the highlight. And I think this is, if we take testing in that view, it's just testing, then let's roll the season and focus on the important stuff.
So you're basically saying the McLaren garage after the first day when they came back in covered in FlowViz looked like a bunch of baby oil bottles being empty at Diddy's house? Is that the correlation you're building?
I mean, you didn't have to say it explicitly. I think it was clear for what I said.
Well, again, some people aren't as quick on the take, like Vale. So that's great. I remember one thing, and you guys kind of covered the spectrum of it, that testing for me, I start off so excited. And I watched an hour and a half, 2 hours of the first day on, much delayed. And I'm thinking this is going to be great. And then I remember how long testing really is and how little you actually learn through each session. It's more the cumulative day after day, session after session. So did I stop at that point and just watch the recaps? Yes. But as we think about the season, as we think about what's next, right, as we look to the 2025 season, one thing that was apparent is that we have some rookies who are pretty talented, right? We didn't see a lot of mistakes here, and I know we can go back and say most of them aren't technically rookies and they've had time to drive, and this is just testing. But I'm curious who you all think will be either the most impressive or disappointing, or both, rookies of the season. And Andy, I'd like to kind of go to you to kind of get your thoughts on what you're seeing from the rookies coming up this season.
Yeah, so I really like the look of Behrman personally. He's done a couple of decent F1 races. Obviously, the first one had very little prep for the Ferrari drive,
right?
And he kind of did okay, but you'd expect anyone to do that. But the later races he did, replacing Magnussen, and he was out qualifying Nico Hulkenberg, or at least one of the two races, I'm pretty sure. He's decent driver. Didn't have the greatest F2 season last year, but the year before that, when his rookie F2 season, he came in 6th, which is pretty good for a rookie. And the year before that, I think he won F3. So I'm really excited to see what he's going to do.
I agree with you. I think it'll be fun to see what he does. Do you have anyone who you think will disappoint? Oh, sorry, Rob, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I was actually going to ask Andy, because Andy's the font of all knowledge, right? Which is that, oh my gosh, there was an argument that burst onto the scene online, which was, who's a rookie this year? And it was getting, I did not have this on my bingo card of things people were going to get angry about at the start of the season, but I'm of the view. Now, I know there's 2 different definitions. There is, what does F1 consider a rookie? So when are you allowed to take part in the rookie sessions that they do? Yep. I think as soon as you've done 2 races, you're not allowed in those anymore. But most people will say that your rookie season is your first full season in F1 where you go through a pre-season and do testing and then go through. Now, your rookie season might last 3-4 races if you're Jack Doohan and you get canned, or your rookie season might last the entire season if you go the entire way. I don't think the length of how long you spend in that rookie season, because people online were like, well, if you do testing and then you do 4, maybe 5, oh no, maybe it's 6 races, then you've completed your rookie season. But if you get binned and picked by somebody else, you'll get another rookie season. I was like, help me, Andy. What do you consider a rookie?
Well, Antonelli, Bortoletto and Hadjar have done no races. They're all clearly rookies. Doohan's only done 1 race, definitely a rookie. Behrman has done 3 races, so he doesn't meet the F1's definition, but each of those races was just a one-off stand-in.
Right.
I don't think you can really count that as being an experienced driver. So for my money, Behrman's a rookie. Lawson, he's a bit of a harder one to argue. I mean, he's done 4 races approximately when Ricciardo injured his hand. And then he did another 6 or 7 races end of last season. It's hard to call him a rookie, but I'm still going to say
this is his rookie. This is his rookie season, I would say.
His first full season, or first season he's starting at the beginning of it. Yeah, I can see the argument. He's kind of a half in, half out for me. I'll come back to that later when I'm going to tell you he definitely is a rookie, but that's for later in there.
Oh, teaser trailers!
Nice.
And sorry, Brian, you asked
disappoint. Do you have anyone you think will disappoint?
Jack Doohan.
Yeah.
I love the guy. Back when I managed to win my way into the paddock at Spa 2022, he was racing in F2 and he was on the podium both races, and he let me kind of like pose for a photo holding his trophy from winning an F2 race. Lovely, lovely guy. I really like him. He's amazing. But as a driver, he's competent. But he's a competent driver. He's not a standout driver, and he is being chucked in the deep end with Alpine and Briatore managing him, and Colapinto sitting on the sidelines.
So we had this debate.
Pressure.
So we had this debate, me and Brian, about like, is it the hottest seat? And I kind of sort of said, well, I think every seat in F1 is hot because no one has the patience. As soon as you're not doing it for a while, there is always somebody waiting in the wings. But with that being said, what do you think he has to do to quash the Colapinto rumours? Is it points? Is it just not crashing? Or is he destined to not have a chance and give it 5-6 races and he's done? What's your read on the Doohan situation?
Keeping up with Gasly. I mean, not beating him. He's a rookie. Gasly is very, very experienced, very, very well thought of driver. But if Doohan is finishing 1 place behind Gasly every race, then that's decent, looking decent. If he's finishing 4, 5, 6 places behind Gasly every race, then what are you doing? You're not getting the best out of the car.
I think you're right.
I mean, he's not had rookies these days don't have as much testing and experience as they used to. But look in 2007, Hamilton's rookie season, being paired with a double world champion teammate, it took him about 4 races before he was beating Alonso. That's kind of the benchmark of where a rookie can get to. Not expecting Doohan to do that, but it does show that just because you're a rookie doesn't mean that you can't take it to your teammate and be competitive and get the most out of the car.
Plus, as I said earlier in the episode before we all joined, Lewis has the greatest debut result ever. He finished P3 in Australia in 2007. Of the current drivers on the grid, not of all time, but of the current drivers on the grid.
Go back 1 year, you got Magnussen, he finished P2 in his first race.
Right.
Anyway.
Of the current drivers on the grid. Lee, how about you? Lee, where are you at with the rookies? Anybody you think's going to be amazing or just not turning out the way they expected?
I have to say, I was actually quite impressed with Kimi Antonelli, and that pains me to say it, to be honest. He kept pace with Russell fairly well, and he didn't take off track, which is important. We obviously remember Monza. Yeah, he actually quite impressed me through the testing sessions.
One thing that also impressed me about Antonelli, I think you nailed it. I agree. Like, he seemed more seasoned than a real true rookie, even though I agree with you. The Parabolica at Monza ate him up and he went into the sign that said Ant, which was perfect. He also had a lot of good answers. He was interviewed a ton. Like, everywhere you turned, there was another Antonelli interview, and it felt like he's an 18-year-old kid who acknowledges he's an 18-year-old kid or whatever he is, 17, 18, 19, but he knows he's young. But he also kind of, every time they asked him something, it felt like the right thing he was saying, which is weird. I mean, I'm not trying to get too much on the hype train either, but I agree with you. Maybe there's something there more so than I may have given him credit for. I know he's had a great career, but maybe there's more for this rookie than we may have thought. He was close to Russell, so
he definitely needs to watch himself though, because there was an interview with one of his team members, and he came up behind him and said, "Are you talking about me?" And I'm bleeping out a word there.
I saw that he kind of jumped over the wall and said, "Are you effing talking about me?"
Are you talking about me? And ran away. Yeah, he needs to watch himself with that one, just in case.
Anybody you think maybe, so far or throughout the season be a disappointment, or would you, either agree or disagree with Andy about Doohan?
I am absolutely on board with Doohan. He does seem like a really genuinely nice guy, and obviously he's come from great stock and come from Mick. But he needs to be on pace with a lot faster than he has been, I think.
When they put the picture out of all the drivers and he was standing in the middle in the back, it just felt like the F1's ready to Photoshop him out and put Colapinto in that space after 5 races or whatever.
It could be quite easy for them to do that, yes.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. How about you? Like, when you look at this crop of rookies and include whomever you like, up to Lawson, even Fernando Alonso, that wily old rookie, what are you thinking for the season?
In the NFL, it's you're rookie for 3 years, right? So we're not in the NFL. But first of all, I just love the fact we're going to Beatles level analysis of album covers to see who's going to die, with the Doohan being in the back. I think we've seen drivers start well and then start crashing all the time, right? We've seen drivers like Piastri, who on this podcast, when we did a similar episode a couple of years ago, somebody said is not going to last the season. And I think Piastri has done fairly okay for himself. So for me, kind of when I look at a driver and think about them, I think about look at Nimrod. He's a great kid, but it's all thanks to his dad. And I think if I look at Doohan, Doohan has got an amazing dad and mentor in him. And the talent runs a little bit in the family. I think you can say about it with Jos and Max. So I have a feeling that Doohan might be a surprise. He'll start a bit slow, a bit controlled, and slowly grow through the season. And if you get, because it's for a rookie, it's important where they land. It's not just the raw talent they have. It's not just how good the car is and how they support and how they coached through it. And throwing Lewis into it. I mean, you're comparing with generational talent that doesn't come every 20 years, right? So I think it's difficult. For me, I'm hopeful of Doohan, not just because I really admired his dad in MotoGP, but because kind of I have this gut feeling about him. And at the same time, if you ask me who's going to be the biggest disappointment, I'm going to say Doohan, because I got a feeling that despite everything I said, somehow it's going to end up with just is good but not that good. So I'm a bit torn about this, to be honest, but kind of I want Doohan to be good. I've got a feeling he can be, but it's hopefully we'll sit around March and I was right, but I have a feeling that might be.
Nimrod, before we move to the next question, do you want to say anything about your father's comment?
I was going to ask him if he achieved the greatness of Mick Doohan and Michael Schumacher.
Well, judging by my son, obviously, yes.
Good answer, Dad. Good answer. So we kind of brought up Lewis and the generational talent that he is, and the fact that, you know, of the current grid, which I got in there before Andy could correct me, highest initial race finish in the initial race. What is his first year going to look like? And Lee, I'd start with you. Lewis's first year at Ferrari will be
fairly interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how he copes with the challenge of Charles Leclerc, who was very much on form at the end of the season. How he can integrate himself within the team. What the new hammer time is going to be.
Yeah.
Because obviously that was discussed last week, and could be an interesting season for him, I think.
Yeah. Interesting. I like that. I think I agree. Rob, do you have a comment you'd like to get in here on before we go to Az to get his thoughts on Lewis's first year Ferrari?
Oh, no, we moved on to the next question. We didn't bother working out what me and you thought about the rookies. We've just moved straight on to the next question.
We've been talking about all this.
I know, it's fine. Carry on.
Well, I asked now. Az, how about you? Let's get someone with an actual opinion who's not Napoleon over there.
Clearly, he's not bitter. I think interesting is the right term, right? Lewis came as a rookie to a car that wasn't built for him. It did very well. He moved to Mercedes, to a car that you can say was built a bit more for him, and it did very well. So switching cars for somebody of his talent should be good, right? And the Ferrari was good last year. If anything, is going to be more consistent than Charles. A couple of years ago, I said my bold prediction was about Charles being good, and he stayed inconsistent. I think he'll be better than Charles in that respect. But he's getting a bit long in the tooth. And can he do a Fernando and stay competitive? I think so. So I have a feeling he's going to do better than Charles this year.
Oh, I mean, that definitely is a possibility. I think a lot of people are thinking that. It was hard when Pit Lane Paul was on. He kind of talked about the amount of time to get used to your team, your surroundings, the car, the mechanics, the approach, the meetings, on and on. And he gave me, as a Charles fan, just enough, just a whiff of hope that Charles would be consistent this year and outperform Lewis. But when I saw the testing times and I saw the runs that he had, I started thinking, he looks pretty good already. And so maybe, and again, I love Lewis, so I don't have nothing. If Lewis finishes first on the team and if we wins the championship, I'll be really happy. But I'd kind of gotten this mental model where Charles was going to have a better season than Lewis, and I think that might be in danger.
But it also depends how you define it. It could be that Charles will win more, but Lewis will be more consistent throughout. So Charles might finish, with the car in the wall a couple of times where you don't expect, even though he's gone better at it. Yeah. But I think overall Lewis will do it better.
Overall enough to do him in points total, or just in consistency in points total as well? Yeah. Okay.
Again, I might eat my words at the end of the year, but I'm going bold.
You probably heard me say the same thing over the last couple of episodes where I'm kind of torn. I don't know whether this will be the challenge that Charles rises to and finally has his breakthrough, and maybe we see him crowned world champion, or whether he doesn't rise to the new contender on the block and Lewis becomes number one in that team. And the longer it goes on, if there is a little bit back and forth like that, I just think it really puts Ferrari in a really difficult spot. They'll be in like the McLaren spot of last year of who's your number one driver. So I don't know. Anyone else I don't even know who else is kind of supposed to be chipping in on this question, but I'd love to hear what everyone else thinks on that battle of where do they see it falling? Does Lewis become number one dog, or does Charles see him off? So maybe Andy.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, with Lewis, what really affects his performance is where his head's at. Go back to when it was him versus Button at McLaren. Out of the 2 out of the 3 years, Lewis completely didn't destroy Button, but he was clearly the better. And then I think it was the middle year, Button got the better of him. And if you read news articles behind the track. What was going on that year? That was when Lewis and Nicole Scherzinger were breaking up, and his head was all over the place, and it completely, ruined him. He couldn't concentrate properly on the racing. And if you look at the last few years at Mercedes, I don't think his head was in the right place. He was not motivated the vast majority of the time. There's a couple of races, it was going well. He got his head down, he got motivated, and that's where his wins came from this last year. But in the races where it wasn't going well, he was just completely giving up, really. And this whole thing over this off season, seeing him moving to Ferrari and all the stuff he's doing there, I think his head is in a fantastic place. I still can't call who's going to come out ahead, but the positivity that Hamilton's giving out at the moment makes me think he's going to give it his best, and there's a good chance.
I don't think we're going to hear Fred doing one of these.
So if the car is bad, we know, please drive it.
I don't think we're going to be having him begging Lewis to kind of pay attention and tune in. Nimrod, what do you think about this first year for Lewis?
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Andy. I think Mercedes, the end of 2021, that whole debacle into 22, where they then found themselves from 8 years of the dominant force into being third, fourth fastest car. I think his head was just not in the right place. It was a mess. The team was, they were pulling people from other projects back to F1 because the team was a bit of a disarray compared to what they had been in previous years because they were on cruise control. And I think the fresh start is going to be really good. He's also back with Angela, if I remember correctly. Yeah. So, just more things kind of aligning for him. And Ferrari seems, I won't go into my kind of 2025 predictions or thoughts, but it seems like a more stable ship than at least a few years ago.
Yeah, definitely. Rob, what about you before we move on? I don't want to cut you off.
Yeah, just again. One last question to everyone is on that whole kind of Lewis piece. For your Charles, do you think Ferrari have handled this well, or have they rammed Lewis in every single social media post? Oh my gosh, you can't move for it being Lewis, and then all of a sudden there'll be one where it's got both of them on there. There's a flash of a 16 and a 44. Now, on one hand, absolutely, Ferrari, you've got to maximize this. It's a big PR thing, big marketing thing to get Lewis Hamilton on board. Just the name in the sport is insane. But if you're Charles, I guess if you're comfortable enough in your own skin, you're just going to go, yeah, cool. They're welcoming Lewis. If you've got doubt in your mental build-up at all, you're kind of looking at that and going, oh, Lewis again, Ferrari's new favourite. What am I, chopped liver? Am I totally off base here, or do you think there's anything in the way that Ferrari are they already positioning Lewis as the number one driver just through the marketing campaign? Anyone feel free to jump in on this one. I'm not like Brian. We can go Wild West here. Come off mute and just let's go for it.
I don't know if I'm actively saying it, but imagine you're Charles and they're coming to him and say, hey, Lewis will put an arm around you. He'll coach you. He'll help you be better. And then he'll look around and say, when has he done it in the past? So, where would he get the confidence that he's the number one? I don't think they would say it. I don't think they need to say it. I think I don't know what's the equivalent of papaya rules, but they'll put a cross here, but I don't know, like some Sicilian battle or whatever. But I don't think there's anything they can or should say to Charles to give him any confidence. It's about him stepping up and taking himself forward and whether he's capable of doing it. To your point, is he capable of looking and say, of course they're bringing Lewis, good. I need to talk to the media a bit less and focus on my driving, on my consistency and visualization and positive thinking. I don't know. I really wanted him to do well. I still want him to do well. Not confident.
Everything I've seen of Charles in his interviews around this, he seems quite happy and calm and within himself. I think he's still confident with himself that he can deliver, and it's just going to be a bit of, we are going to be equal number one driver until such point in the season, as it's looking like one of us is going to need to support the other one, and then when that happens, it happens. I think he's mature enough to realize that Ferrari likes to use team orders, but I think he's also confident enough that he can deliver in the car, and until it's clear that one of them's pulling ahead of the other, I don't think they're going to bring team orders in.
Do you want to be the number one driver, Charles?
Question?
I mean, that's what we're going to hear over the radio, is it not?
And to be honest, he's probably quite glad of it. Instead of Ferrari pushing him as the number one and putting him on all the merchandise and the marketing, he's actually had a little bit of a rest from it. So that might actually give him more focus during the races.
I was thinking the same thing, Lee.
Who knows?
I'm just desperately trying to just quash this feeling and push it deep, deep, deep down inside, because I'm so stupidly excited that this is the year. This is the Ferrari year. And this is all going to play out as a title fight between Lewis and Charles. That's and I've got to suppress that because McLaren are not going anywhere quietly. But the more I see Lewis kind of looking comfortable in that car, the more Charles maybe isn't going to shrinking Violet into the background. And if he does take the fight to him, I've got to keep that excitement buried deep, deep down, because I've been here before as a Ferrari fan many times. So, yeah,
good point.
We'll see what happens.
As requested, this.
Wait, what are these tires?
Sorry, it's a mistake.
So yeah, it's going to be interesting. I do think Ferrari has gotten their act together. I think they're in a different place than they were a few years ago. I don't think we'll hear Fred on the radio begging Lewis to drive the car. We know it's bad. So I think it's going to be fascinating. I think there is something to it, though. Whomever gets out fastest out of the gate. And at that point, they can just do what they want and say, but I'm leading. Right? I mean, you have the argument on your side, and I think there would be a massive kerfuffle in the paddock if someone's leading the championship or close to the top and ahead of their teammate and then is given the reverse team orders at any point for any reason. I think the whole world would be going crazy. So 25, we've talked about Lewis, we talked a little bit about the rookies. I'm curious if you all have a bold prediction, something that Rob invented. I loved it. We had the F1 crap, a crazy something accurate prediction. It had to be, and this doesn't have to be that, right? But it has to be bold in the same flavor. So I'd be curious, Nimrod, if we could start with you, something you have that you think is a bold prediction for 25.
One thing that I've kind of heard, I think I've seen people contemplate it, but Yuki to Aston Martin at the end of the year.
Oh,
along with the Honda. So Honda, I think, jumping ship to Aston Martin, I think just makes sense. Yuki, I mean, he can't spin forever racing bulls. He's clearly shown he has some talent, even if, I myself have asked questions on this pod about him. But so I think it makes sense. Fernando's also, he's in his, 8th rookie season by now, on his second spell, something along those lines. So I think it makes sense. I think there's the whole Max to Aston Martin debacle. But I mean, he's just been winning a Red Bull so much. It's $1 billion is a lot of money, so maybe that could tempt him. But at least let's go with this. If the 2025 charts, which I earlier said might be a lot of nonsense, to go by, Aston Martin might be a pretty a place he doesn't want to go to by that regard. So yeah, Yuki to Aston Martin in the year.
Okay, so you've got what? Fernando calling it time at the end of this year.
Yeah.
So calling time the 1 year before he gets his hand on a Nui car.
I think he's going to get fed up with the car this year. I mean, I think the stats is you could take Lance Stroll out both the last 2 seasons, and Aston Martin's championship position doesn't change.
True.
That sounds about right. That sounds about right. Andy, how about you? 25 bold prediction. That's something you're excited to share with the world.
There's going to be a race won by a rookie.
Ooh, so this was the teaser from before.
This is the teaser from before. Where Lawson's definitely a rookie, because otherwise my prediction becomes less likely.
So it's Lawson.
Lawson or Antonelli. They're both in teams that won multiple races in 2024. They've both got a good chance of winning races in 2025. I think Antonelli on a good day is certainly going to be a match for Russell. So if it's a race that Mercedes is the fastest car, I think Antonelli's in for shout. And Lawson, I rate him higher than I did Perez. I'd expect Max to beat him most of the time, but the chance of Lawson beating Max in a race or two, it's possible. Could it be for a win? It's possible. Anyway, it was a bold prediction. I thought it would be a fun one.
I like it.
I mean, that's a good shout. I was just glad that you didn't bust Bortoletto out of the bag because I was going to say what you've been drinking over there.
Yeah, the nice thing is they kept saying that Haas and Sauber are propping up the timetables again this season, just like last. And I'm like, oh, that hurts considering my bold prediction was Haas finishes 5th in the constructors. And I watched
Haas
Williams
finishing that far back.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think they are either. They were on a different run plan. They had something totally different going. I didn't, and I was happy that Aston Martin was down because this could help me. And I didn't like the fact that Williams was on fire because that'll hurt me in my Haas prediction. And I love Williams, so I have no problem, those drivers, that team, if they do well. But as we're kind of going around here, how about you for 25?
So I'm going to do a sap. I'm going to have 3 parts to it.
I knew I liked you.
The first part is that Lando is going to start on pole position and lead through corner 1 and finish lap 1 in first. Okay, he'll do that.
You're hurting Andy's feelings over here.
Oh, I've just taken a drink. And I'm trying not to spit it out of my screen, laughing so much. That's all.
Look, I'm a fan, right? But I think I would like to see Bottas have good news at the end of the year, with hopefully or a bit earlier, Audi or elsewhere. I don't care, but I want to say a prediction: he gets the Audi contract he wanted to, but I'm going a bit nuts, yes, but yeah, we said bold, maybe unrealistic, maybe stupid, but that's what I want to see. And the third one, actually, the one I'm a bit more serious about, I think Piastri is going to be the number 1 driver for McLaren at the end of the season.
Wow. So in terms of the World Driver Championship, he'll be above Lando in points.
That's my very, very stupid, bold prediction.
No, it's all of these have been within shout of reason. So these are great. Very good. And I like the multi-part answer. I like the fact that you give Rob a lot of grief, too. There's something about you, Az. I like the cut of your jib. Lee, I'm going to turn it to you. How about 25 predictions, things that you're excited to see?
My bold prediction is Max will finish not in the top 2 of the championship.
So
actually,
third or lower, if I
flip
that around. Again, stating the obvious, third or lower, you're saying?
Third or lower.
Wow.
And my second one is that Lance Stroll will remain with Aston Martin next year.
If I could find the applause button, I'd play it. Lifetime contract, dad of the decade.
Yeah, pretty much.
He'll be there. So that is. So you really believe the Red Bull, the trajectory from last year, and the way he dragged it around the track, and obviously the points he scored in the second half compared to other people, continues. And the testing, Red Bull wasn't great, so Max won't be able to overcome Ferrari or McLaren magic, I'm guessing, is the way to interpret that.
That's what I'm thinking, yeah. I think he's gonna do as well as he possibly can with that car, but I don't think it's gonna be up there as much as we think we saw last year.
Az is begging to counter this. Sorry, Rob.
No, not counter. I want to follow up. I want to follow up the question then. So do you think he will join Newey based on that? Because Red Bull won't be doing great. Is that kind of going to be the step to move him across?
I don't think he'll join Newey next year. It will all depend on Helmut, on whether Helmut goes because he's frustrated. If Helmut goes, then Max will go.
So Lee, you are taking the sound bites from Max that this year's car already feels night and day better than last year's car did at this point in the season. You're taking that as complete BS, and I don't mean Brian's initials.
Something like that, yes.
Yeah, it's. You don't usually hear a lot from the drivers, to be honest. They all come out with kind of the same vanilla sound bites in testing. And that one just caught my eye, that Max was very bullish about, no pun there on Red Bull, but very bullish about, it feeling so much better than last year's car. And if last year's car he dragged around and got those results, is he just trying to do the mind games already of, I'm coming? I don't know. It just feels dangerous to write Max Verstappen off. That's all I'm going to say.
If it felt better than last year's, he was still struggling to turn that car in. Big time. That car had no front end.
I love these so far. Rob, do you have one you'd like to contribute, or a couple, or 8, or whatever number you have?
Okay, my bold prediction. Here we go then. My bold prediction is that Sauber will score points in the first quarter of the season.
Oh.
There we go.
All of us are kind of stunned.
There's bold and then there's just stupid.
I know. But a couple of DNFs, rainy race, you never know. We'll see. But there you go. Sauber are going to get points in the first quarter of the season because they were actually, as much as I hate what they did to Valtteri, but they were actually starting to look better towards the tail end of last season. I don't think they're going to be down in the basement as much as they were last year.
True, but it required a lot of extenuating circumstances for them to be on the lead lap even. So, I mean, anyway, I guess we'll see. I like it. I like the shout. And I'll stick with my 2 that I'd had, the Haas finishing 5th. I really do believe I like the Ollie comment from before, and Esteban, while he's not my favorite driver, I think he's talented and decent and consistent. So I think you may see things from Haas that will be good. I am very afraid of that Williams testing because they look so good, and Carlos is amazing and Alex is amazing, but I guess we'll see. And then I still have Charles outpointing Oscar, which I don't know if it's necessarily bold, but since Az just said he's going to be the number 1 driver at McLaren, it's going to take a lot from Charles to outpoint him. So I'm sticking with those couple. And we'll see what happens.
So you're not really going, everyone else went bold and you're just going middle of the road.
Haas 5th isn't bold enough?
That's going up. Isn't that going up 1 position from last year?
Haas 5th? No, Alpine.
Isn't that going up 1 position from last
Alpine
year?
Alpine got all the points last year at the end of the season. I think they finished 6th. So I think Haas was 7th, if I'm doing my math right.
Oh, 2 jumps. That is bold.
2 jumps.
Yeah, I'm gonna side with Rob here. I feel a bit dirty about it, but I'm gonna side with him, right? When Rob said they're going to score points 3 seasons ago, I mean that was bold. Going a bit better this year is okay. It's an interesting move, but not a bold one. I think you need to dig a bit.
All right,
deeper.
you want another one? 2 rookies who start the season won't finish the season as drivers on their team. Not just 1, but 2. How's that?
There we go. That's better. Yeah. Moving in the right direction. I mean, you could have said 3, but 2, we'll take 2. That's.
I can't say 3 because if you include the other guys, they're all going to be driving by the end of the year.
Who do you reckon then?
So obviously it'd be a shock if I didn't say Doohan as one of them. I got Isaac Hajar. I just feel like, who knows? And I think he's good, but I can't believe it's Bortoletto at a bad car at Sauber. I just can't believe they would move on from him. I can't believe it's Liam unless he's worse than Checo, which I don't see happening. I agree with Andy. I think you said he's a step up, so I'm 100% there. Antonelli, they've invested so much in him at the face of, the future of Mercedes. He's going to be there through the whole season unless he's just an abomination. So I think, and Behrman, I already just said a second ago, I like his opportunity. So I had to pick one that's left, and it's Isaac. And only because the Racing Bulls, I think, will be not that great. And if there's any fear or worry that Max could move, I think they could do things with that seat that may surprise us, especially if he's not outperforming Yuki. If he's, 4 places behind Yuki every race, I think they may say this is a low sunk cost, time to move on.
Okay, so I'm going to pick Az's point up. I think you're on the right lines of a bold prediction. So you've named the 2 rookies that are going to lose it. To really put it into the realms of boldness, who's taken that second Racing Bulls? Let's say they bin him in the summer break.
Yeah.
Who's going in there? Who's going in there then?
Kevin Magnussen. No, I don't know. I don't know. I'm kidding. I have no clue. No clue.
Valtteri
Victor Bottas.
That would be nice. I don't know. All right. Are we ready for the crown jewel of the conversation, the drivers and constructors champions? It is time where we can all pick who we think, and a little rationale too, because I'm sure when Rob says that Sauber's going to finish first to top the table, he'll have to explain what in the heck he's talking about. But so I don't think we've heard from Az first on any of these. So Az, would you like to tell us who you have at the tops of the tables?
Sorry, I was daydreaming.
Who's going to finish first in the drivers, and who's going to finish first in the constructors?
So In the constructors, I think it's going to be McLaren, which I don't think is any bold prediction. I think it's going to be between them and Ferrari. In first in the driver, I have a problem because my heart want to say Piastri based on what I said earlier, which will make the McLaren fans happy. My head can't right away Max. I mean, I unlike you always say you like everybody. I don't like Max, but I have a lot of respect for him and his skill. So I can't. I want to put Piastri, but I'm going to say Max, and they're not going to come top two in the champion in the constructors because A, they don't care about it, B, they just don't have the team for it.
Okay, wow. So you've already told Lee he's sniffing glue over there with his prediction that Max isn't in the top two. I like that. Lee, we're going to go to you. Who do you have at the tops of the tables, and what do you have to say to Az about Max finishing first in the championship?
It's definitely, well, it's an opinion at the end of the day. I definitely do think it's going to be close between McLaren and Ferrari. I would love to see McLaren do the double. I think Ferrari may take it. Drivers' Championship, I see it a three-way battle between Lando Norris, Charles, and Lewis.
Oh, okay. You don't have Oscar in there.
Or
not Max.
Fully.
Yeah.
Oscar's going to be close, but I think he's going to fall just slightly at the last hurdle. Not through any lack of skill, because, I mean, man is a talented driver. I just think he's going to have to, or he will just fall at the last hurdle on the championship rounds.
So who breaks the tape?
I'm going to predict Norris.
All right. So Ferrari and Lando is who you have.
Yes.
I should be writing these down because I've already forgotten what Az said already. Max, he said. Max and McLaren. Yeah, okay. Andy, to you.
I think it's going to be difficult. I've got a boring answer, really. Difficult to look past Norris. Certainly was scoring one. Was it the best? Actually, I'm trying to think now. Norris and McLaren just looked like they're that much faster than everyone else towards the end of last season and through pre-season testing as well. It's difficult to look past them. I was tempted to put Norris for the drivers and then Ferrari for the constructors. And I just thought, well, actually, how often do you find that you get the driver, the team that gives the driver champion doesn't get the constructors? It's actually pretty rare. And you only really get it when you've got a standout number one driver and the second driver in a team's a long way behind versus another team who've got two really good drivers. And you look at McLaren with Norris and Piastri. I mean, Az thinks Piastri is going to beat Norris, and it's not impossible at all. He's a very good driver. And you look at Ferrari and go, okay, Leclerc and Hamilton, yeah, they're both really good. They could bring it up there. But basically, you've got to predict that if Norris is getting the Drivers' Championship, then the amount that Norris beats the top Ferrari driver has to be less than what the second Ferrari driver beats Piastri by, and it's just they're all going to be much of a muchness. I think Norris McLaren's the most likely, but could be anything else.
This is why he's a fantasy guru, folks. He thinks in three dimensions. Nimrod,
I'm a fantasy guru. I did awful last year.
Well, we're not counting last year. Last year doesn't count. Me either. Same thing. We agreed. You and I, 24, never happened. Nimrod, how about you? What do you have happening with the constructors? And would you like to refute something your father may have already said about the drivers?
I have George Russell finishing fifth. Not winning it. Don't worry.
We were all like, wait, what? Yeah. Good job.
Well, I mean, yeah. So, I don't know. 2022, Ferrari were on fire. Internally, externally, engine, team, everything. And then Fred came in. And I don't know. The first season was a bit, up and down. Last year, I got a much better sense of Ferrari. They had results like Japan and Monza where the strategy wasn't a mess. They got rid of Xavi, I think it was.
Yep.
It was their engineer, and I no longer find myself saying question or we are checking, at least once a week. It feels like it all calmed down, and the victories seemed quite controlled. By contrast, when I think back to a lot of the key points in last season, a lot of them come down to a bit of a milder mess in McLaren. you think Hungary, you think, I mean, even just the fact you look back last year from Miami onwards, McLaren were basically competitive for wins, which is 3/4 of the season. Lando finished with 4 wins. And I mean, it's quite easy to forget, but I mean, the Lando Norris into turn 1 or lap 1, you know, it was pretty shocking. It was the type of thing where, having watched Mercedes dominate, whenever they would have an issue that would reoccur, like I think they had some issues with their starts, you know, a bit similar. Within a month, they'd be like, "Yeah, we fixed it. We've done something." It just seemed like it just kept going on. Lando Norris in turn 1, Max beats him, and Max just seemed to have him beflustered. Mexico, to think, you know, an example, he just pushes him off, loses it. Charles, you know, by contrast, seemed to have a better understanding how to race Max. Don't think Max is going to be quite top 2. Sorry, Dad, but yeah. So I mean, hopefully McLaren and others ahead is testing, or at least the testing, you know, graphs, which might mean nothing. But I'm gonna side with Rob's often delusional thoughts. I'm gonna give a Ferrari double. I'm gonna be. It's gonna be this year, right? I've kind of become a Ferrari fan over the last year slowly. Ferrari fans have been saying next year for about forever. Maybe it'll actually happen.
So, sorry, Ferrari as a constructor, and it's Charles you're picking as the driver?
Yes. I mean, I've asked questions of Charles. I think people here have asked questions of Charles. I think he's slowly become more consistent. I think the number of, I mean, you put the example of, like, what was it, France 2022 with him screaming down the radio. You probably have that soundbite, but it's not, I don't remember any scenarios like that last year that were, you know, major big deals. There were no huge mess ups on their side. They seem to be a lot more stable. They seem to be a lot more controlled. I mean, Sainz the entire season knew he was going. Right. He could have caused a massive drama. You know, I'm not going to let him past, and he did so at times, but it was still pretty tame. It was incredibly tame season compared to 2022, and for me, the point's in good direction.
So you referenced a couple of things before we hear from others' rebuttals and thoughts. And Rob, first of all, you referenced this.
Copy. We'll check that.
We'll check that. We'll get back to you. We didn't hear that. You referenced the I almost said Paris, but I meant France. Yeah, that was loud. My apologies. And then, of course, what happened at McLaren?
Just remember, every single Sunday morning meeting we have.
That cannot happen again. And if Oscar does take a step up and they're pleading with each other over the radio, papaya rules, but what about papaya rules? I don't see that being good. So I am curious to see what happens there. Rob, how about you? Where do you have your number ones?
Oh my
from?
gosh. I can make so many counter arguments with myself on this one. So if I look at McLaren, it would be remiss to look past McLaren. They're just best car last year, 2 top quality drivers. Oscar is getting better year on year. He's showing that he's able to address the thing that was his weakness. So he really doubled down on looking at managing his tires. We saw that last year. He was just so much better. We were saying that maybe the title charge came too soon for Lando last year, and he didn't really know how to handle himself in a title showdown. So you've got to back him for learning from that. So surely McLaren are in a much stronger position this year than they were last year when they won it. So they've got to win the title, and the champion has to be one of those two. But I'm just loving everything Nimrod said. It's just like, I'm just hearing angels and music when Nimrod was talking there. It's like, if that Ferrari car takes a step up. Last year it was competitive in some races, others, track doesn't suit them, blah, 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 and they would fall back into kind of fighting for a podium. They have got 2 absolutely top quality drivers there. So if Ferrari bring it, and I take Andy's point of if you've got 2 top drivers and those 2 drivers are delivering points all the time, then they can deliver you the constructors, and the constructors usually gives you the champion. So it's going to be a Ferrari, McLaren, Charles, Oscar title. That's what it is. So if I've got to nail my colours to the mast, I so want to back Nimrod and go Ferrari. So I am. It's going to be Ferrari and Charles. Even though I predict that Piastri will beat Charles this year, I'm going fully heart over head for once. I'm throwing all the logic to the side. Yes, this is Ferrari's year. Damn it, this is my whole Lance Stroll being the 3rd best driver all over again coming.
It is. So Andy, you had
But it's probably McLaren. It's probably McLaren and Lando, but yeah.
Andy, you had McLaren and Lando, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll keep it brief. I'll echo that because that's what I had to. I have McLaren looked strong at the end of this year. They look strong in testing. Lando, I still think is the number one in that team. I love Oscar. I think we all do. We all know there's a point in time where they will have real decisions to make about how they can have two number one drivers, two championship quality drivers. I don't think it's there yet. And so I would go Lando and McLaren. Although, if it is Ferrari and Chuck, I ain't got no problems with that. And I would celebrate in the streets with everybody who predicted that, even Robert J. Vale, Esquire. What'd you have, Rob?
I just want to say, basically, what we got 6 of us on this call, and not one of us is even hinted at Mercedes having any part in this conversation whatsoever, right? We've kind of had Max might win the championship from Az, but beyond that, every single one of us has gone into a Ferrari versus McLaren debate, right? We joked about that car. Was it the Nats fart and the car spins round? If Mercedes have learned anything from last year and been able to correct anything, last year we saw the second half of last year, maybe in the last 3/4 of it, was just insane that we had so many winners. Do we get, final thought for everybody before we wrap this up, is this one of the lowest points totals for a driver and a constructors this year because we're going to see Ferrari, Mercedes, McLaren, and Max, maybe Liam every now and again for Andy's prediction, all coming and winning, and therefore all taking points off each other? Is this going to be one of the lowest totals for each title, do we think? Anybody?
It's a cool idea. I like it. It's just, you just never know. I mean, are McLaren as far ahead as all the pundits are putting them? I hope not. I'm a McLaren fan. I'd love to see McLaren and Norris take the championships. But what I really want is a close title fight without Max winning, because I'm bored of Max winning.
Yeah, I'm totally in agreement with that. Close championship battle is what I would love to see. And at the end of the day, I don't really care who wins, but as long as it's not Max.
Michael, who was on here a couple weeks ago for the 100 Seconds of DRS, is sitting at home right now listening and saying, no, it's going to be Max. It's going to be Max.
Nimrod, you look like you're about to chip in.
You were saying about Mercedes and if they get everything in order. No, Mercedes strike me as the Red Bull of the 2015 to 18, 19 era, where they come out the gate and they're like half second down, and then as the season progresses they get more and more competitive, and then the year ends and you go, maybe if they do well next year at the beginning, and then they come out and once again it's like bit of a mess at the beginning of the season. Halfway through they kind of pick up a victory or two. They kind of strike me as that team. So yeah, as much as I joked George Russell will, yeah, and they'll kind of be there. It kind of strikes me as a similar season to this one. They'll pick up a few victories here and there. Lando, Max crash, George comes in to win, like in Austria. Don't think they're up there.
What about you, Brian? We're not really, what do you see? Because we've both got so excited about thinking that this year is going to be just the closest, best battle ever before we go into the new regs. Do you still feel it, or have you got any kind of McLaren are just going to actually be dominant this year?
I actually think the parody, and I know I pronounce it the American way, which sounds like a comedy or joke or farce as opposed to equality. I think there'll be parody on the grid where we'll see what you described. I think we'll see a good spread of points amongst the top teams. No one kind of driving away early. No one kind of, building up a sizable lead. Definitely not like Max did a couple years ago when he circled the field twice. So I think what you said is accurate. I think that's just a reflection of two teams who will win a bunch. One team who will have one driver winning or near, on the podium regularly, and then one team who we don't know. If Mercedes goes out and it's daytime, but cool, but not windy and dry, then their car is good. But if it's nighttime or too cold or hot, or if there's high deg or if there's wind, they're bad. So as long as they know that, right, because that was actually sort of accurate from last season. So as long as they get those conditions, I do think they'll be fine. They'll do better. I think they're getting a handle on it just in time to start with the new car for next year.
So just for those of us who speak English, you meant the word parity, yes?
Correct, yeah. But back here in America, in the central part of the country, we call it with a D, parity. Okay. I know it's spelled with a T, But this ain't
So
spelling.
I think you make sense. Sticking with my prediction of Max winning, he has to win on his own. So I don't think it's going to be a particularly low season. But like everybody else, we all hope that it's going to be a very low winning season and a lot of drivers win, and there's a very, very tight fight. And then we never miss a race and never go and find you guys are going to talk about in the podcast, because there was so much to talk about during the race. But
Totally. Well, you know what? That was a good kind of perspective, I think, on what we can expect. Can I ask you guys to return for a wrap-up at the end of the year, and we can kind of look back on what we thought and how it went? Getting a lot of yeses. Oh, no, he said he's going to have to pay him, so we'll see. We'll see if we can afford that. Rob, anything you'd like to say before we say thanks to everybody?
No. Yeah. Thank you to you, Brian, for organising this, because you did have to learn how to do polls on Discord. No, this isn't sarcastic. No, don't give me any of that. I'm not going to tell people on the audio what you're doing right now on the video, but this is genuine. Do appreciate you organising this, because this was you made this happen, and I think it was a good conversation.
Well, I appreciate that, and I appreciate you. And like I said, to the four of you for making time to join Rob and I this week is awesome. It is seriously one of my favorite episodes every year. So. Well, like we said, we'll do a recap at the end of the season, and we'll watch Andy and how far ahead he gets in fantasy. We all have to cheer him on, because like we know, apparently he thinks in 3 dimensions when it comes to these points and things like that. So I love it. But anyway, thank you guys all so very much. Oh, Lee, go ahead.
Last time. Can I just note that you said that last time and we never did it?
I know. But we did this one, and I'm going to say this time, and then we'll do better. Always better and better every time we go. Guys, thank you all so very much.
Box.
Awesome. That was a fantastic time, as I just said, as we wrapped that up. I guess it's probably a good opportunity, again, to say thanks to the 4 folks who've made the time on a Sunday to join us, but also to everybody who participates on the Discord. I really do. Like, during the season, we get some pretty good conversations going, both about each race, but also about news and things that are going on. And when there's a busy, silly season, it really heats up on the Discord. So feel free to join us. I'm sure the link is easily found on our website or on this episode. But
it's in the show notes.
Well
as and what else I added to the show notes now, if you click down inside here, is the link to our newsletter. So sign up to that if you can. We'll put some extra little special pieces in there. But
Rob does a great job with the newsletter. I love reading it each week, even though it's basically a recap of things we've already talked about. I still enjoy it.
Well, appreciate it. So, yeah, brilliant episode. Can't wait to be doing a preview next week. Over to you to close us out, Brian.
Everybody have a wonderful week. We are 2 weeks away from the season, 1 week away from Drive to Survive. It's here. This is real. This is not a test. We'll talk to you soon.